Well, hello. Welcome back to another exciting edition of Coffee with Stephen. So, this week's blog is entitled The Rights of All. And I start out by making somewhat of an annoying statement that tends to manifest primarily from Democrats when they lose. Essentially, I'm saying, okay, now that the Democrats have won, they've got to go through and really do some soul searching to determine whether or not their party is going to be able to ultimately survive. This is something that typically happens when Republicans win. When Republicans win, Democrats essentially make the argument, okay, well, now that they've won, they're going to have to purge their party, or they're going to have to completely alter their platform. The party system has always been set up to be adversarial. That's fair. I get it. Okay. But Republicans, to a large extent, with the exception of Donald Trump, have always taken a defensive posturing. This is somewhat by design, since most Republicans tend to favor constitutional democracy. They want to limit the size of government. And that always puts them in a position of effectively defending their position against the overarching growth of the government bureaucracy. But in this particular blog, I'm focusing in on the rights of the minorities and why I think that the Democrats are setting themselves up for a catastrophic failure when it comes to protection of minority rights. Our Constitution is effectively designed for the protection of minority rights. The Bill of Rights is, by definition, a protection of minority rights. If you're in the majority and everybody agrees with your position, then your speech is never going to be curtailed because everybody effectively agrees with it. On the other hand, freedom of speech is specifically designed so that minorities that are articulating a particular political or philosophical point of view are not prevented from doing so by the government. As we've often said, and I mentioned this in the blog, popular speech requires no protection at all. It's only speech that is, in fact, unpopular, that requires the full muscular weight of the First Amendment. So now the Democrats have a majority in the House, slim majority in the House, and they actually have a power sharing agreement that's developing with the Senate. They don't actually control the Senate. They only control in the sense of a tie in an actual vote. When it comes to the day-to-day business of the Senate, there is no majority. The Democrats and the Republicans exist in complete parity right now. That's notwithstanding the possibility that there may be a defection of one Democrat to the Republican side or one Republican to the Democratic side. That happens quite frequently, and that might ultimately sway the balance of power for the Senate itself. In any event, what I really am trying to kind of articulate with the blog is that the concept of minority has become so focused on racial, ethnic, religious, gender. Those are the types of things that when people think of minorities, that's what they're thinking of. The fact of the matter is minority is a much broader context than that. In the House of Representatives, the minority are the Republicans. Okay, they have been that for the last 2 years and will continue to be so for the next 2 years. Minority rights are broader than simply the color of one's skin. Minority rights actually oftentimes comes from the thought and the words that are emitted from one's lips. And the Democrats are doing a horrific job right now of articulating a robust protection of minority rights. We've seen this with Twitter, Facebook, all these other things where they're trying to cancel, the ability for minority speakers to be able to proselytize and promulgate their views and things along those lines. And some people are saying, well, but these are private companies. The First Amendment doesn't protect against private restrictions of speech. The First Amendment only protects against, government intrusions on speech. That's not entirely accurate. The government cannot use a private company to act as a proxy to be able to essentially engage in unconstitutional conduct. We also know that companies, even to the very, very small companies, have what are referred to as entanglements with the government. And these entanglements effectively create a jurisdictional thing where the government's rules and regulations suddenly get attributed directly to these private companies based on the idea that they are essentially acting as agents of the state. I would argue that every single internet company clearly falls within this, which means that these activities that they're engaged in are, in my opinion, probably unconstitutional. Anyways, read the blog, disagree with it, certainly last week a lot of you guys did. But hopefully, it'll interest you. As always, train constantly, train consistently, train repetitively, and train with purpose. Above all else, stay safe.